This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Today, Russia goes to the polls, Senegal's opposition leader is released from prison, and Sunak rules out a May election. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Friday the 15th of March, 2024. Russia began 3 days of voting today for a presidential election that's expected to give Vladimir Putin another 6 years in power. While there are 3 other candidates on the ballot paper, none of them present any real challenge to Putin, who the Russian state-backed pollster predicts will win 82% of the vote, his highest ever, with a 71% turnout, the highest since 1991. The election comes a month after the popular opposition figure, Alexei Navalny, died suddenly in an Arctic penal colony. To protest against Putin's re-election, people are planning an action called Noon Against Putin, which will see voters turn out all at the same time at midday on Sunday and reject him symbolically, such as by spoiling their ballots, voting for one of the other challengers, or writing Navalny's name instead. Noon Against Putin is a way for people to express opposition without risking arrest, as hundreds of Navalny supporters were detained after his death, and an estimated 20,000 people have been arrested for protesting against Putin's war in Ukraine. Other than Navalny, Putin's most vocal critics are all dead, exiled, or imprisoned. Putin, who is now 71, has barely bothered to campaign, having held power for longer than any Russian leader since Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, by changing the rules to allow himself to run for re-election. He effectively gave himself a clean slate, meaning he could run in 2024 and potentially again in 2030. 2 anti-war candidates, Boris Nadezhdin and Ekaterina Duntsova, were also barred from running. Duntsova said that going to the polls en masse is essentially the only anti-war option Russians have, saying the symbol of opposition this year is the Q. The other 3 remaining candidates are communist Nikolai Karatanov, Leonid Slutsky, the leader of the Nationalist Liberal Democratic Party, and Vladislav Davankov of the New People Party. However, the Kremlin is known for its long tradition of including so-called puppets, i.e. unserious challengers on the ballot paper, to help keep up the facade of democracy. There's more on the way, but be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to make the daily briefing part of your daily routine, or just search for us on your podcast app to listen along. Late last night, Senegal's opposition leader Ousmane Sonko was released from prison. Sonko, a longtime critic of President Macky Sall and leader of the opposition coalition Liberate the People, has been in custody since his arrest last July, and was barred from running for the elections due to a defamation conviction. Ever since, he's been at the heart of a bitter 2-year standoff with the state. But now Sonko has been pardoned as a result of a new amnesty law passed by Senegal's parliament last week. The pardon comes as part of an effort to douse tensions ahead of the presidential election scheduled for the 24th of March, following weeks of protests over its planned postponement. Sall threatened to delay the vote by 10 months back in early February, which triggered widespread social unrest and led to concerns about democratic backsliding. The new amnesty law also pardons hundreds of protesters and opposition members who'd been accused of crimes with political motivations over the last 3 years, including Sonko's ally and party deputy Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Faye will stand for the presidency in 9 days' time, as Sonko still remains ineligible to run. Supporters have taken to the streets of Dakar to celebrate his release from prison. The opposition leader is popular among the youth for his platform of radical opposition to the system and greater economic independence. Supporters of Sonko have maintained throughout his imprisonment that lawfare was used to prevent him from challenging the ruling coalition, an accusation denied by the incumbent president. Despite a huge amount of speculation in recent weeks about the possibility of an election in the UK on the 2nd of May, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ruled this out yesterday. Here in the UK, the Prime Minister has full discretion over the timing of general elections, provided they take place at the latest 5 years since the previous election. Right now, polling for Sunak is, well, not all that great, but some journalists have argued that things may only get worse for him as the year goes on. This would incentivise Sunak to hold the election earlier then. Additionally, there were some signs that the government was attempting to rush legislation through in order to give them the edge in a potential May election. However, yesterday the Prime Minister explicitly ruled out a May the 2nd election. Labour have responded to this by claiming that Sunak is running scared and that he still did have time to reconsider. The likelihood now, though, is that the election will take place later in the year. Moving over now to the most recent developments in Gaza and efforts being made to solidify a proposed ceasefire. Diplomatic talks have stalled since the UN failed to produce a ceasefire before the start of the month of Ramadan, but the US last night circulated a final draft of a United Nations Security Council resolution that would support international efforts to establish an immediate and sustained ceasefire. No time has been set for a vote, and the draft is still in blue, meaning the draft could still be changed. The first version of this US proposal was first proposed about a month ago, after the US vetoed the Arab proposal for a ceasefire, circulated by Algeria and backed by 22 Arab nations. This was the US's third veto of a proposed ceasefire resolution. The final US draft circulated yesterday has a key difference to the initial draft proposed in February. The initial draft stated that Israel should not proceed under current circumstances of its ground offensive into Rafah. Netanyahu has since stated that the IDF will go ahead with this offensive on this safe zone, which hosts 1.4 million displaced refugees, despite President Joe Biden warning against this. The final draft now states that the Council only emphasises its concern over the Rafah offensive. Children have been starving and dying of malnutrition in aid-starved Gaza, with UN food trucks being turned away. The draft would also express the Council's deep concern about the threat of conflict-induced famine and epidemics presently facing the civilian population in Gaza, as well as the number of undernourished people and the catastrophic levels of hunger. And finally, the first top-flight male professional football star, Josh Cavallo, to publicly identify as gay, has proposed to his partner on the pitch of his club of Australian A-League team Adelaide United. Cavallo wrote on X thanking his team for providing a safe space in football. Professional football has made strong gains in tackling homophobia and racism in recent years, and launched multiple campaigns, but prejudice remains entrenched among some fans, clubs, and players. Last year, Arsenal goalkeeper Aaron Ramsdale said that he could no longer remain silent over homophobic abuse in football out of love and respect for his brother, who is gay. Ramsdale said, "I want my brother, or anyone of any sexuality, race or religion, to come to games without having to fear abuse." A lot of stuff that we talk about at TLDR News can seem pretty complicated, especially when we dive into economics and detailed data, which is why we use Brilliant.org to keep us sharp. Brilliant is where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in maths, data analysis, programming, and AI. Brilliant is a learning platform designed to be uniquely effective. Their first principles approach helps you build understanding from the ground up, which is also how we structure TLDR videos. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you play with concepts, a method proven to be 6 times more effective than just watching lectures. Plus, all content on Brilliant is crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from MIT, Caltech, Duke, Microsoft, Google, and more. Brilliant helps build your critical thinking skills through problem solving, not memorizing. So, while you're building real knowledge on specific topics, you'll also be becoming a better thinker. Learning a little every day is one of the most important things you can do, both for your personal and professional growth. Brilliant helps you build real knowledge in minutes a day, with fun lessons you can do whenever you have time. It's the opposite of mindless scrolling. Brilliant recently launched a ton of new content in data, all of which uses real-world data to train you to see trends and make better informed decisions, something politicians could really learn from. Anyway, these are for learners of any level to start or continue learning data analysis, with a fully built-out suite of new content, from Bayes' theorem to multiple linear regression. And you can truly learn by doing, as you'll be working with real datasets from sources like Starbucks, Twitter, Spotify, and more. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Brilliant for their support of TLDR News.